Hi, welcome to the final screencast for LSSL 5385, Literature for Children. This is Dr. Lassane with one last piece that I think might be helpful to you. You'll notice on LiveBinders that you have a tab. The tab is called Textbook Chart. If you open it, you'll get an Excel file, and this is what it looks like. I've filled out the file a little bit for you just so you can see what I'm looking for here. This is a way that you demonstrate to me that you've read the chapters in the textbook and taken in that information. There's no quiz. I am expecting you to apply this information to the blog post that you're doing for class. But here's a way for you just to kind of organize everything, put it into one place. So the first column is for the chapters from the text, and I've broken them into categories. The first section of the book is called Knowing the Kids, that's chapters 1 through 4. Then the second chapter is called Knowing the Books, chapters 5 through 7. And the final section is Knowing the Strategies, chapters 8 through 10. Remember, the book is called Making the Match, the Right Book for the Right Reader at the Right Time. And what's important then is to know about the readers, know about the books, and know about how those two connect. So for each of the sections, I'd like you to fill out what you consider to be the key concepts for those particular chapters. I've given you a start here. You've seen that I've left you a couple of lines to fill in. That means that that's the minimum that I want. I want you to fill in a couple things that aren't here. So I've talked about the key concepts, for example, in those opening chapters being the psychological theories that I review, Piaget, Maslow, Havikhurst, and Kohlberg, the different ways kids grow and develop socially, culturally, intellectually, morally. Those are all things discussed there. And finally, how to determine the needs and interests of students that you might teach. I think that there are a few other key concepts that you will get, but I've given you a start. The next column says, okay, give me some examples from the books that you're reading for class. So in terms of psychological theories, when I was reading The Chocolate War, I was thinking about Kohlberg and moral decision making. Jerry's forced to consider his values. Notice there's a typo there I need to go in and fix. His values and what is important to him. Kids who are not yet beyond the first stage of Kohlberg might not understand what Jerry is feeling. So what does that mean in terms of application to the library? It means I need to consider factors beyond reviews when I'm preparing an order of books. I need to take into account where my students are based on age, culture, moral, intellectual, and other kinds of development. I need to be able to communicate this to teachers too, that one book is not suitable for all readers, as no two kids are alike in terms of their needs, interests, and preferences. And so talking about choice might be something that I bring up. I'm going to do that for each of the key concepts. I'm going to talk about how one of the books I've read for class kind of reminds me of why this is important. And I'm going to then talk about how this plays out in my library, if I'm in a library already or when I'm in a library after I'm done with my MLS. So there's section 1, and that's done. And notice that I've given you some ideas about sections 2 and 3 as well. So one of the key concepts, the definitions and criteria for the genres and subgenres. So how do I apply that to books? I'm able to apply the criteria for science fiction and fantasy to The Knife of Never Letting Go in order to tell you that it's a very well written book because it has world building, it's got a foundation on science it helps readers enter into Nessa's world. How will I use that later in the library? If I'm ever tempted to genreify the library, and I see places that do this all the time, I need to keep in mind that there are some books with blurred genre lines and books that blend and mash up genres, so perhaps that's not going to be something that's going to work for me. Notice that once again, I've left you a couple of sections here to write about your key concepts. I've done the same thing with section 3, knowing the strategies. One of the key concepts, one of the chapters is about book talking. So I've learned about the techniques and suggestions for book talking. How will that apply to one of the books I've read? Well, I might include some read aloud in a book talk of Speak to let readers know that there's good humor in a story that ultimately is about a very intense subject. And how does this help me in the library? I know that I need to become really good at book talking because that's a wonderful way to connect kids to books. So I've given you the bare bones, I've given you some examples, and all I ask you to do is to fill in the rest. When you're done with this chart, you're going to upload it to your blog, and it will be generally, I'm thinking, at the end of all your blog entries, because this is something you're going to do kind of in reflection at the end of the semester. I hope that that answers your questions for the textbook chart. If it doesn't, all you need to do is contact me. So welcome to class.